Hello and a very warm welcome to everyone tuning in. Whether you are starting your morning commute, winding down for the evening, or just taking a moment to breathe in the middle of a busy Monday, we are so glad you are here with us. Before we dive into the fascinating world of finance and technology today, I want to gently invite you to subscribe to our channel. We bring you exciting, high-level financial news in a soothing, conversational format designed to inform you without the stress. So please hit that subscribe button and join our community of curious minds.
Thanks, Joe. It really does mean a lot when you guys subscribe. It helps us keep doing this deep research. And wow, Joe, speaking of deep research, today is a big one. It is January 5th, 2026, and I feel like everyone I know is talking about Apple again. But not just about the iPhone. It's about Siri. Finally.
Finally is the right word, Jane. It has been a long road. If you look back at the headlines from late 2024 and throughout 2025, the narrative was consistently, Apple is late, Apple is behind. But here we are, kicking off 2026, and the rumor mill, fueled by some very credible reporting from Bloomberg and others, is spinning faster than ever. The story today is Apple's AI intelligence, specifically the massive overhaul of Siri that is expected this spring.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We are sitting here with our iPhone 17s, which came out last September. They are great phones, don't get me wrong. The hardware is beautiful. But Siri? Joe, honestly, it still feels like the Siri from 5 years ago sometimes. I ask it to do something multi-step and it just gets confused. Is that finally going to change?
That is exactly what this Siri 2.0 update is targeting. According to Mark Gurman at Bloomberg, who, let's be honest, is practically the oracle for Apple News, Apple is preparing to launch a revamped Siri around March of this year, 2026. This isn't just a fresh coat of paint. This is a fundamental restructuring of how the assistant works.
We heard promises about this last year, though. Remember the Apple Intelligence rollout in late 2025? We got the writing tools, which I actually use a lot for emails, and the notification summaries are nice. But the voice assistant part, it felt like it was missing the brain.
Precisely. The features we saw in late 2025 were what we call on-device utilities. They were safe, private, and efficient, but they lacked the raw power of something like OpenAI's GPT-4 or Google's Gemini. That is where the news gets really interesting this week. Reports are cementing the idea that Apple has finalized a deal to lean heavily on Google's Gemini models for the heavy lifting.
Wait, Google? I thought Apple was building their own thing. I remember hearing about Ajax or Glenwood. Weren't those their internal codenames for their own AI models?
They were, and they still are. Apple hasn't abandoned in-house development. In fact, projects like Linwood are focused on efficient on-device processing. But here is the reality check that hit Cupertino last year. You cannot fit a large language model with world-class reasoning capabilities onto a phone battery. You just can't, not yet. So the strategy shifted. They are going hybrid. The simple stuff stays on your iPhone, but for the complex, intelligent queries, Siri is going to hand off the baton to a cloud-based giant.
And that giant is Google. That feels ironic, or maybe just pragmatic. Apple and Google are rivals in everything else.
It is the ultimate frenemy situation. Bloomberg reported late last year that Apple was closing in on a deal worth potentially $1 billion a year to access Google's Gemini infrastructure. We are talking about a model with something like 1.2 trillion parameters. To put that in perspective, the on-device model Apple uses is likely in the range of 3 to 7 billion parameters.
Whoa, okay, hold on. I need you to break that down for me. 7 billion versus 1.2 trillion. That sounds like the difference between a bicycle and a rocket ship.
That is a surprisingly accurate analogy, Jane. Parameters are essentially the variables the AI uses to make decisions or understand language. A 7 billion parameter model is like a very smart, well-read high school student. It can summarize a text, check your grammar, maybe identify a plant in a photo. It is quick and doesn't need much energy. A 1.2 trillion parameter model, like Gemini or GPT-4, is like a room full of PhDs with access to the entire internet. It can understand nuanced, complex logic, multi-step reasoning, and coding.
So when I ask Siri in March, hey, plan a dinner party for 6 people, 3 of whom are vegan, and send the invites to my close friends list, the bicycle model on my phone would probably just search the web for dinner party.
Exactly. The current Siri would likely show you a web link or say, "Here is what I found on the web for vegan dinner parties." The new Siri, powered by that 1.2 trillion parameter cloud model, should, in theory, be able to draft the menu, create the calendar event, and maybe even draft the text messages for you to review. That is the promise of the app intent system we have been hearing about.
App intents? That sounds like developer jargon. Why does that matter to me?
It matters because it's the bridge between the brain and the hands. A smart AI is useless if it can't push the buttons in your apps. App intents is the framework Apple is forcing developers to adopt so that Siri can actually see and control the apps. The news from X, formerly Twitter, and the developer forums is that Apple has been extremely aggressive pushing this for the iOS 19 and late iOS 18 updates. They want Siri to be able to navigate menus for you.
That would be a game changer. My grandmother struggles so much with navigating deep menus and settings. If she could just tell Siri, make the text bigger, and it actually happens without her digging through accessibility settings, that's huge.
And that is the holy grail for Apple, accessibility and ease of use. But let's pivot to the financial side, because all this technology is expensive, and investors have been, let's say, impatient.
Right. I was looking at my portfolio this morning. AAPL had a weird year in 2025. It didn't tank, but it didn't exactly skyrocket like Nvidia or even Amazon, right?
Correct. If we look at the 2025 wrap-up reports from Barron's and Yahoo Finance, Apple finished the year up about 12%. Now, in a vacuum, 12% is a decent return, but the S&P 500 did nearly 18%, and other tech giants, the Mag 7 peers, did significantly better. Microsoft and Meta were up over 16% and 20% respectively. Apple was effectively a laggard.
Why? Was it just the lack of AI?
It was the perception of no growth. iPhone sales have been relatively flat. The iPhone 16 and 17 cycles were good, but not super cycles. And the market punishes you when you are perceived as being late to the biggest platform shift in a decade. However, that sentiment is starting to shift as we enter 2026. Barron's recently published a piece analyzing the 2025 laggards and arguing they could be the 2026 winners.
So buy the dip? Or I guess buy the lag.
Standard disclaimer, we don't give financial advice, but the analyst's logic is compelling. They argue that 2025 was an investment year for Apple, building out the data centers, finalizing these deals with Google and potentially OpenAI, and getting the silicon ready. The M5 chip is rumored for late 2026, and the A19 for the iPhone 18 will likely be a monster for AI processing. The thesis is that once Siri 2.0 launches in spring 2026, just a few months from now, users will finally have a reason to upgrade their old iPhone 12s and 13s.
That makes sense. I have friends still holding on to their iPhone 13 because they say, what's the difference? If Siri actually works, that's a difference.
Exactly. Bank of America analyst Wamsi Mohan has been talking about this multi-year upgrade cycle for a while. He believes the install base is getting old, too old to run these new features. Remember, Apple Intelligence requires at least an iPhone 15 Pro or the iPhone 16-17 series. If you have an iPhone 14 or older, you are locked out of this new Siri. That is hundreds of millions of people who might upgrade this year.
That is a lot of potential sales. But Joe, what about the privacy thing? If Apple is sending my data to Google's Gemini cloud, doesn't that break their whole what happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone promise?
That is the billion-dollar question, Jane, and it is something Apple's marketing team is working overtime to address. The architecture they announced, private cloud compute, is their solution. The idea is that when Siri needs to go to the cloud, it uses Apple's own servers first, which are running Apple silicon and are auditable for privacy. If it needs to go to a third party like Google, they are supposedly building a privacy wrapper where your IP address is masked and the data isn't stored by Google for training.
Supposedly. That's the key word.
Right, and for the die-hard privacy advocates, that might not be enough. But for the average consumer, if it makes Siri useful, they will likely accept the trade-off. We saw this with search. People use Google Search on iPhone every day, despite the privacy concerns, because it yields the best results. Apple is betting the same will happen with AI.
Okay, let's talk about the fun stuff, the hardware. You mentioned spring 2026. Besides the software update, are we getting new toys?
We are. The supply chain rumors, which we track via sources like Mac Rumors and iClarified, point to a very busy spring. First up, the iPhone SE 4. This has been delayed essentially forever, but it looks like it is finally landing.
The budget phone? Why is that exciting?
Because for the first time, the budget iPhone will essentially be an iPhone 14 body with modern internals. No more home button, full screen, Face ID, and crucially, it is rumored to support Apple Intelligence. If Apple puts an A18 chip in a $499 phone, that is a massive, aggressive move to get AI into more hands, especially in markets like India and China where they have been struggling against local competition.
Oh, that is smart. Get people hooked on the AI ecosystem at a lower price point. What else?
There is also the new iPad Air with the M4 chip, which is just a spec bump really. But the more intriguing device is the so-called Home Hub, or a smart display. Think of it like a Google Nest Hub or an Amazon Echo Show, but running a specialized version of iOS. Let's call it HomeOS.
I feel like I've been hearing about an Apple HomePod with a screen for 5 years.
You have, but the difference now is Siri 2.0. A smart display is useless if the voice assistant is dumb. Now that Siri is getting a brain transplant with Gemini, a kitchen display that can actually help you cook, manage the family calendar, and FaceTime, it suddenly becomes a viable product. Gurman says this is launching mid-2026 to coincide with the software rollout.
I would buy that. My kitchen counter is currently a mess of chargers and a dumb Bluetooth speaker. Having a dedicated Apple screen there would be nice. But Joe, I saw something wild on X the other day. People were talking about a robot?
Ah, yes, the infamous Apple robot. This is the Moonshot project. Bloomberg reported back in August 2025 that Apple is accelerating its robotics work. The concept is a tabletop device with a robotic arm that can move a screen around to face you. So if you are walking around the kitchen, the screen follows you.
That sounds kind of creepy, but also very sci-fi.
It is very sci-fi, and with the price tag rumored to be around $1,000 or more, it is definitely a luxury item. But think about the context. Apple killed the Apple Car project, Project Titan, a couple of years ago. They have all these engineers who specialize in autonomy, sensors, and motors. They have to put them somewhere. Robotics is the logical next step for spatial computing outside of the Vision Pro headset.
Speaking of Vision Pro, is that still a thing in 2026? I feel like the hype died down completely.
It is still a niche. We are expecting a cheaper version, maybe called Apple Vision Air, later this year or in 2027. But honestly, for the stock and the immediate future, the Vision Pro is a rounding error. The money is in the iPhone and services is where this AI subscription model comes in.
Wait, subscription? Am I going to have to pay monthly for this new Siri?
That is the fear, and also the opportunity for investors. Currently, Apple Intelligence is free with your device, but analysts at Barron's and Morgan Stanley have speculated that Apple might introduce a tiered system, Siri Plus, maybe. If they are paying Google billions for compute, they might pass that cost onto power users. Maybe the basic summarization is free, but the advanced Write My Entire Report feature requires a $20 per month Apple One Premier subscription.
I guess I'd pay it if it really worked. I already pay for ChatGPT Plus, so if Apple bundled it, I might actually save money.
And that is exactly the math Apple wants you to do. Bundling is their superpower. If they can add AI intelligence to the Apple One bundle, they lock you in even deeper. It makes the ecosystem stickier, and sticky ecosystems lead to higher stock valuations.
So, summarizing the vibe for 2026, it is a show me year? Like, okay, Apple, you talked a big game, now show me it works.
100%. 2024 was the year of panic. 2025 was the year of promises and foundations. 2026 is the year of execution. If Siri 2.0 launches in March and it's buggy, or if the Google integration feels clunky, the stock could get punished severely. But if they pull it off, if they make AI feel like magic again, which is Apple's brand DNA, then that $270, $300 stock price target we are seeing from Wedbush and others is very achievable.
And what about the competition? Is Samsung or Google just sitting still?
Not at all. Samsung has been very aggressive with their Galaxy AI marketing, and since they also partner with Google, they have had some of these features for a year already. But Apple has the advantage of hardware integration. The silicon in the iPhone, the neural engine, is unmatched in efficiency. And let's not forget the developer ecosystem. If Apple can get third-party apps to play nice with Siri via app intents, that is a moat Samsung doesn't quite have because the Android app ecosystem is so fragmented.
True. Every Android phone is a little different. Every iPhone is standardized. That makes it easier for developers to code for Siri.
Exactly. One last thing to watch out for in the news cycle over the next few weeks: executive interviews. We have seen Tim Cook be very careful with his words, using phrases like deliberate and thoughtful. But keep an eye on Craig Federighi, the software chief. He is the one who has to sell this. If we see him doing a media blitz in February, we know the spring launch is going to be big.
I love watching Craig's presentations. He has such dad energy. Okay, Joe, before we wrap up, I have to ask, are you upgrading your iPhone this year? You have the 16 Pro, right?
I do have the 16 Pro, and honestly, I am on the fence. I want to see the new Siri in action first. If it truly changes my workflow, if it can actually manage my calendar and emails without me double-checking it, then yes. I might even upgrade to the 18 Pro in the fall if the hardware supports even faster AI. But for now, I am in wait-and-see mode. What about you?
I think I'm the same. But that smart display, if that comes out and it looks good in my kitchen, I might be the first in line. I'm a sucker for a new gadget.
Are we all? And that is why Apple is a $3 trillion plus company. They know how to make us want the next thing. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Apple's 2026 AI story. It is going to be a fascinating spring, and we will be here to cover every update, every stock movement, and every new feature as it drops.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Don't forget to check the show notes for links to the articles we mentioned from Bloomberg and Barron's. And seriously, hit that subscribe button if you learned something new today.
Until next time, keep your curiosity high and your portfolio balanced. Take care.